Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Jewel Jordan.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2018 to 2022 American Community Survey 5-Year Estimates Pre-Release webinar. Today's webinar is focused on helping you prepare for the release of the 2018 to 2022 ACS 5-Year Data Products. Before I proceed, I'd like to say a special thank you to our American Community Survey respondents for their participation in the survey. Without them, we would not have these data, which are so important for America's communities. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone of where they can find resources for this upcoming release. Today's slides are currently available in the 2018 to 2022 ACS 5-Year Estimates Press Kit. We'll also be posting a recording of the webinar there if you'd like to refer back to it. The link provided on this slide will lead you to the press kit containing these materials. If you're in need of closed captioning, click on the CC button on the lower left-hand corner of the screen. We also have an interpreter available today for those that need it. During the course of the webinar, feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask questions. We have subject matter experts that are on standby to answer them. We also have 2 verbal Q&A sessions today, one at the end of our presentation on the ACS and one at the very end. To ensure we maximize our time for questions, all callers are allowed 1 question and 1 follow-up question. If you're unable to ask your question or have additional questions after the webinar, feel free to send them to the Public Information Office via email at pio@census.gov or by phone at 301-763-3030. I'm Jewel Jordan, a Public Affairs Specialist with the Census Bureau's Public Information Office. Our presenters today are going to be Gretchen Gooding, a branch chief with the American Community Survey Office, and Maria Valdesera, a program analyst with the Center for Enterprise Dissemination. I'll now turn it over to Gretchen Gooding, who will provide you with information about the American Community Survey. Gretchen?
Thank you, Jewel. Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to today's webinar in preparation of the ACS 5-year release next week on December 7th. Before we start, I want to outline what we'll be covering today. First, I'll talk about next week's ACS data release and our upcoming releases in early calendar year 2024. Then I'll give a brief overview, a refresher of the ACS, and cover what's changed for this release. I'll also briefly talk about the various tools you can use to access ACS products, and last we'll go over ACS website and its many resources. We'll open up the webinar for any questions you may have before I turn it over to Maria Valdesera, who will cover the data.census.gov updates. And then finally, we'll end with a second Q&A. This coming Tuesday, the 2018 to 2022 ACS 5-year data will be available for early access through the embargo ahead of the public release next Thursday on December 7th. These estimates cover 2018 through 2022 time period for all geographic areas. The media embargo will begin Tuesday, December 5th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The embargo site will contain all products on data.census.gov as well as the summary files. Please visit the press kit link provided on this slide to find the 5-year products available for the media. Our public release will be Thursday, December 7th. The news release and data products on data.census.gov, the API or Application Programming Interface, and summary files will be available at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Additional data products, such as the narrative profiles available through the ACS website, Quick Facts, and My Tribal Area will be updated with the new 5-year data by 10 a.m. Today's webinar and the focus is our 5-year release next week. However, I also want to point out the remaining products that will be in calendar year 2024. The remaining products are the 5-year public use microdata sample files and the variance replicate estimate tables, which will be released on January 25th, 2024. The ACS PUMS files are a set of untabulated records about individual people or housing units. PUMS data are made available to data users at the nation, region, state, and public use microdata areas referred to as PUMAs. PUMAs are non-overlapping geographies containing at least 100,000 people. PUMS files allow data users to create custom tables that are not available through pre-tabulated ACS products like what you find in data.census.gov. PUMS files can be found on the Census Bureau's FTP server or through the microdata tool available at data.census.gov. The variance replicate estimate tables allow advanced users to calculate margin of error, which includes the covariance term when combining ACS estimates within a table or between geographies. Our variance replicate estimate tables can be found on the ACS website at census.gov/ACS and under the data section. Before we dive into information on the release coming next week, I first want to provide a brief overview of the ACS and the 5-year data products for those of you who aren't as familiar with the survey, as well as to provide an overall quick refresher. The American Community Survey is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local statistics on critical planning topics. The survey samples approximately 3.5 million addresses each year. These data are collected continuously throughout the year to produce annual social, economic, housing, and demographic estimates. The data are collected through the ACS help inform how trillions of dollars in federal funds are distributed each year. Our estimates, covering more than 40 topics, support more than 300 known federal uses and countless non-federal uses. The Census Bureau typically releases 3 different sets of data estimates from the ACS each year in the form of 1-year and 5-year period data sets, as well as 1-year supplemental estimates. The ACS was fully implemented in 2005 and began collecting data for all of America's communities each year. The content collected by the American Community Survey can be grouped into 4 main types of characteristics: social, demographic, economic, and housing. Social characteristics include topics such as educational attainment, language spoken at home, and veterans. The ACS also collects basic demographic characteristics such as age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin. Economic characteristics include topics like commuting to work, employment status, and income. And housing characteristics include topics such as computer and internet use, housing cost, and vehicles available. These topics are used to produce more than 1,000 tables for local communities each year, and they power countless news stories every day. We want to send a special thanks to our media partners for powering their stories with ACS data. In addition to the 40+ topics the ACS collects data on, another strength and what the ACS is known for is the number of geographies at which data are available. Starting from the top at the national level all the way to your local community, the ACS provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. The 5-year data release includes more than 828,000 geographic areas. These geographies include granular ones like census tracts and block groups. And there are 87 different summary levels available for the 5-year estimates. Unlike the 1-year ACS releases, which has a population threshold of 65,000 or more, geographies in the 5-year release do not have a population threshold in order to be published. Geographies in the 5-year release include the nation and American Indian areas, Alaska Native areas, and Hawaiian homelands, all states, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, all metropolitan areas, all congressional districts using the 118th congressional district boundaries, all counties and places, zip code tabulation areas, and all tracts and block groups. And block groups are the smallest level of geography produced by the ACS. For specific guidance on 5-year estimates, first, it's important to understand the concept of a period estimate, as all ACS estimates are in fact period estimates. Period estimates describe the characteristics of an area over a specific time period. Not a single point in time is what you find with the decennial census. In the case of the ACS 1-year estimates, the period is 12 months. The estimates in the 5-year release are pooled together across 60 months. Important that we note, the 5-year estimates are not an average of the 1-year ACS estimates. The 5-year data release next week will describe the population and housing characteristics from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2022. After the data are pooled together, they're updated with the geographic boundaries of the last year of the period, in our case 2022, and then assigned appropriate weights to produce population and housing estimates. Weights are adjusted using the population and housing totals controlled for age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin, which are derived from the Census Bureau's Population Estimates Program. Also, income and dollar estimates are adjusted for inflation based on the most recent year of the period. Therefore, this year's 5-year estimates are adjusted to 2022 dollars. Now, a question you may be asking is, when should I be using 5-year estimates instead of 1-year estimates? You'll want to use 5-year estimates when no 1-year or 1-year supplemental estimates are available. Remember, 1-year estimates cover geographic areas with a population greater than or equal to 65,000, or there's a supplemental table available for these populations of 20,000 or more. But if the geography you're seeking does not meet these thresholds, you'll rely on the 5-year estimates. Another instance when you'll want to use 5-year estimates is when the margins of error for the annual estimates are larger than desired. A margin of error is a measure of sampling variability that's presented along with all ACS estimates. For example, 5-year estimates are helpful when analyzing small population groups because of the higher margins of error associated with them. Also, if you're comparing several geographies or one or more geographies that do not receive 1-year estimates due to the population size being too small, you'll have to use the 5-year estimates to compare these geographies. If you do find yourself interested in comparing 5-year data, we encourage you to make comparisons with non-overlapping data. This year, you can compare the 2018 to 2022 5-year data with the 2013 to 2017 5-year data or any earlier 5-year data set. These non-overlapping data sets allow a comparison of unique data. So only compare 1 year with 1 year and 5-year with other 5-year non-overlapping data. Please do not compare 1-year estimates with 5-year estimates. 5-year estimates are helpful when comparing across geographies because all geographies are represented in the 5-year estimates as opposed to the 1-year estimates. For example, all counties and places, or what you may call a city or town, are available in the 5-year estimates regardless of population size, and this is not true for the 1-year estimates. Similarly, 5-year estimates are also great for making comparisons across subpopulations like ancestry or language groups. When an estimate from the Population Estimates Program, or PEP, is available, such as the total population or numbers of males and females in a county, the PEP data is the official value and is preferred. One last note when making comparisons. Percent estimates are often more reliable than the count estimates they're based on. Because of this, we recommend users compare percents instead of counts where possible, but users can always compare count estimates if their needs require it. If you're new to the ACS or you want more in-depth information on ACS resources, my colleague presented an introductory webinar on the survey with slides and a recording just in August. We also have 2 modules posted in a recently launched course titled Discovering the American Community Survey. This comprehensive course is designed for all kinds of data users and those who need to understand and access the fundamentals of the ACS in order to use our data. So moving on from the basics of the ACS, let's go over updates for the 2018 to 2022 5-year release. Starting with geography changes. Each year, there are updates to various geographic areas across the country. These changes occur for various reasons, such as annexation, disincorporation, and geocoding updates. This can reduce the comparability of some geographic areas, but ensures that the most recent version of geographic areas are used in our tabulation process. We have a few noteworthy geography updates coming in this release. The public use microdata areas, or PUMAs, and urban areas are based on the 2020 census. They were previously based on the 2010 census. We released data for the 118th congressional districts in our one-year release, but as a reminder, those are still available. We're also releasing data for the 2022 state legislative districts, which are only available in our 5-year release. And finally, Connecticut counties will be replaced with 9 planning zones. These planning zones will replace 8 Connecticut counties, which ceased to function as governmental and administrative entities in the 60s. Another change is related to the comparison profiles. 5-year comparison profiles show ACS data side by side from 2 consecutive non-overlapping 5-year periods, indicating where there is a statistically significant difference between the 2 sets of estimates. We will discontinue the ACS 5-year comparison profiles for congressional districts for this release and moving forward, due to the use of non-comparable geographic boundaries across the comparison periods following redistricting. Redistricting occurs following each decennial census and may occur throughout the decade. These geographic changes make it unfeasible to produce 5-year comparison profiles using comparable district boundaries across the comparison periods. However, all congressional districts meet the 65,000 population threshold and receive the ACS 1-year estimates and comparison profiles. Finally, I want to touch on population controls in the ACS for the 2022 data release season. ACS data are controlled so the number of housing units and people in certain categories are consistent with the Census Bureau's official estimates from the Population Estimates Program. The 2022 ACS data products generally use the vintage 2022 blended base population estimates that incorporate the 2020 census, vintage 2020 population estimates, and the 2020 demographic analysis. One change from last year is that these vintage 2022 population estimates use more 2020 census information for estimating the group quarters population. They previously used the vintage 2020 population estimates that had the 2010 census as its base. The result of these changes should yield better population estimates for the major group quarter types than those resulting from updates to the 2010 census base that were previously used. An important point for the use of blended base population estimates is that the demographic detail is not informed by the 2020 census, so differences in distributions between these 2 datasets may exist. For the 1-year products, the 2022 estimates taken from the vintage 2022 blended base estimates are used. For the 5-year products, the controls for the ACS 5-year products are the average of the annual population estimates across the 5-year period, 2018 to 2022. The blended base estimates, however, only provide population estimates for the year from the census forward, so 2020 through 2022. So we need to draw our population estimates from another source for 2018 and 2019. Typically, we would use the intercensal estimates, which are 2010-based post-censal estimates that are adjusted to account for the 2020 census for this task, but these were delayed. With the lack of availability of the intercensal estimates for 2018 and 2019, our solution was to bridge the 2018 and 2019 taken from the vintage 2020 post-censal estimates, the most recent estimates available, using the vintage 2022 blended base estimates. This accomplished 2 main goals. 1, the 2018 and 2019 estimates form a consistent time series with the 2020 to 2022 estimates. And second, our controls for the 5-year data products incorporate the same level of detail from the 2020 census as the blended base estimates. All right, that section was a mouthful. All right, let's transition to discussing table changes. This year we have 37 new detailed tables covering field of degree, language, race, and housing. New table 15013 shows median earnings by field of first bachelor's degree by sex, while B 15014 shows median earnings by field of first bachelor's degree by age. Language tables B 16002 and race tables C 02015 and C 02016 are now available for the 5-year estimates. In the previous release, these were only available for 1-year estimates. New housing tables B25008A through I, B25010A through I, and B25077A through I show the total population by tenure, average household size by tenure, and median home value iterated by race and Hispanic origin of the householder. Two new tables provide additional estimates for vacant housing units. B25136 provides estimates on structure type by the occupancy status of the housing unit, while B25137 provides the number of bedrooms by the occupancy status. B25138 and B25139 show the 25th percentile gross rent and the 75th percentile gross rent, respectively. B25140 shows the count of households paying more than 30% of their income towards housing costs broken out by 3 tenure categories. This table also shows the number of households paying more than 50% of their income toward housing cost. We also had modifications to tables for a variety of topics, and we'll use the next 2 slides to highlight some of these changes. 10 additional country of birth groups were added to B05006. Race categories in B02015 and B02018 were reorganized to include regional headers and additional race categories. Additional race categories were also added to C02003, CP05, and DP05. Categories for year moved in were updated in B25026 and S2502 to better capture recent movers whose unique characteristics can be useful for housing analysis. Home values in preceding comparison years in CP04 are now inflation adjusted to $2022. The tables we covered today are only a sample of all the changes. For a complete list of all new, modified, and deleted tables, visit the link on our slide. Next, I want to provide information on how data users can access the 2018 to 2022 5-year data products and what data products are available. Before diving into how to access the data, I want to give a rundown of the data products that are available for the 5-year release. On this slide, the letter in parentheses next to the product name is a table identifier as it appears in data.census.gov and other data tools. The number represents how many tables are available for that type. Data profiles show both estimates and percentages for a particular geography on a variety of topics in one table. There are 4 profiles for social, economic, housing, and demographic characteristics. There's also a selected social characteristic profile for Puerto Rico, which is identified by having the PR at the end of the table ID. Comparison profiles, which are identical to the data profiles, but offer comparisons of estimates across different ACS years, providing side-by-side data from 2 different 5-year periods. For example, comparing 2018 to 2022 versus 2013 to 2017. This product is best for comparing estimates over time. Subject tables also like data profiles, but these tables include more detailed ACS data classified by topic. Therefore, subject tables are topic specific. Detailed tables contain estimates and margins of error organized by topic and are the most specific tables in the ACS product package. All the products I mentioned above are available through data.census.gov. I'll talk about narrative profiles on the next slide. Narrative profiles help novice users interpret the data, and they're one of our more popular products. They're pre-generated reports that describe a geographic area by providing text and graphics for roughly 15 different ACS topics. If wanted, users can choose to produce a report on all 15 topics or simply a subset of topics for their selected geography. On Thursday, December 7th, the narrative profiles will be updated with the newest 5-year data. The difference is that the narrative profiles are not made available on data.census.gov. Rather, these profiles are made available on the ACS website. The ACS summary file includes all estimates and margins of error for the detailed tables for all geographies published in the ACS. It's generally intended for advanced users who work with statistical software. As a reminder, the 2022 5-year summary file will only be released in the table-based format, replacing the prior sequence-based summary file format. Each ACS detailed table will be available as a separate file containing the estimates and margins of error for all published geographies. The summary file will be available on the Embargo website during the embargo period starting December 5th, and then publicly available on December 7th. This year, we have a new handbook for the table-based summary file data users, similar to a handbook we published several years ago for the sequence-based format. Another tool available to access the ACS data is the API, or Application Programming Interface. The API is a data tool that enables researchers and software developers, and also many of you, to access and use Census Bureau data within their programs and applications. This is a tool that presents the data in a standardized way. By standardizing the API queries language across multiple data sets, the learning curve for researchers and developers is much easier. With the API, you can select any variables in multiple data sets and place them in raw format for the layout of your choice. The API includes many Census Bureau datasets, including the ACS 1-year and 5-year datasets and supplemental estimates. The API is not part of the embargo, but it will be updated on the release day of December 7th with the 2018 to 2022 5-year estimates. We also have other tools like QuickFacts, My Tribal Area, Census Business Builder, and a few others that will be updated with the 2018 to 22 5-year data. QuickFacts and My Tribal Area are scheduled to be updated on Thursday, December 7th with the newest 5-year data. QuickFacts is an easy-to-use application that shows tables, maps, and charts for our most frequently requested information for more than 10 census surveys and programs. QuickFacts provides data for geographic areas with a population of 5,000 or more. My Tribal Area is another tool that's quick and user-friendly. It gives 5-year ACS characteristic estimates for tribal areas across the U.S. So if you're looking for data on areas such as tribal reservations, trust lands, this is a good tool to use to find the information quickly. We also have some other tools, including My Community Explorer, On the Map for Emergency Management, and Census Business Builder that will be refreshed after December 7th. And as you likely know, data.census.gov is our primary platform to access data from the Census Bureau, including the data for next week's release. And data.census.gov will contain most of the products you're looking for. My colleague Maria Valdesera will go over recent updates and demo data.census.gov later in the presentation. All right, moving on to my last section for the webinar today, and before we open up to questions, I want to take a moment to highlight some of the important areas of the ACS website and a few web pages that can support you in your use of ACS data. Obviously, the data itself is the main draw for many users. You want to get the data and use it to help your communities, support your organizations, and make important decisions. But with that said, we don't want to overlook the resources we provide and how they help you understanding the data in anticipation for the release next week. So first, we have the ACS main page at census.gov/ACS. This is a great tool to start if you have questions about the ACS. The ACS website contains a wealth of information about the survey, the data products, tools for data users, and other helpful information. The News and Updates tab will lead you to our data release schedule, new and notable documentation about what's to come in each release, as well as the table and geography changes specific to each release. This page is broken out by year and updated throughout the fall and winter as new data products are released. And we updated some of those pages this morning. And if you're interested in learning about the latest available geographic boundaries, the Geographic Boundaries by Year page is a useful resource. It contains a list of geographic areas, such as counties or tracts, and the vintage they use for each year of the survey. You can also learn about some planned updates. So for example, the Census Bureau is planning to discontinue the New England City and Town Area, or NECTA geography, starting with the 2023 release. For users that have accessed the data but need more information to understand the tables and complete their analysis, we offer technical documentation in the form of code lists, subject definitions, group order definitions, and instructions for applying statistical testing, comparison guidance, and accuracy of the data. We do have a new document this year that explains JAM values, which are the character or numeric values used to explain the absence of data in data.census.gov, the API, and the summary file. So for example, in this document explains that the N you may see in data.census.gov is equivalent to negative 9,999,999 in the API and summary file. This means estimates not displayed due to insufficient number of sample cases for selected geographies. Another popular resource within the technical documentation is the Table Shells and Table List page. The table shells display the layout of tables without the estimates of margin or margins of error filled in. They contain the line number, description of the data, and table ID. For most years, the table shells for detailed tables are available in two different formats: individual table shell files and a file with all detailed tables. The tables for other types of products may be available through the FTP site as shown below. The ACS table list contains columns with the table ID, table title, table universe, 1 year or 5-year availability for all the detailed tables, supplemental estimate tables, comparison profiles, data profiles, and subject tables in one spreadsheet. And this wraps up my piece of the 5-year pre-release webinar, and I will turn it back over to Jewel to start the Q&A session.
Thanks, Gretchen. Now we'll go ahead and begin taking questions. In order for you to ask a question, use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you in the order in which your hand was raised. When you ask your question, please make sure that you state and spell your name and provide your affiliation. And because we want to give everyone an opportunity to ask their questions, we'll allow just one question and one follow-up per caller. Following the question and answer session, Maria will provide a live demonstration of how to access ACS data in data.census.gov. And there will be a final question and answer session after the demonstration. As we wait for questions to come in, we'd like to invite you to stay in touch with us. One way is by telling us how you use data from the American Community Survey. Have you or your organization used the ACS to make an important decision, help your community, or expand your business? If so, please share your story to let us know and to explore how data enthusiasts across the country are using ACS data in creative ways. Doing so provides further support for the importance of the data we collect here at the Census Bureau and is a great way to further promote our data. Also consider joining a group we have specifically for users of ACS data, known simply as the ACS Data Users Group. The group includes a website and online community with over 4,500 members where you can share messages, materials, and announcements related to the survey. Membership is free and open to all interested ACS data users. And finally, you can sign up for and manage all email updates from the ACS. Our monthly events and updates email will alert you when new materials are available and you'll stay updated on our data releases. Visit the QR code under each icon to learn more about these resources. If you're looking for further assistance on how to obtain or understand ACS data, our data dissemination specialists or DDSs who are located within your region can provide you with assistance with Census Bureau data. These specialists usually provide help in English, but sometimes are available in other languages as well, depending on the needs of their communities. Whether conducting one-on-one webinars with business startups or conducting large-scale presentations at universities, these specialists strive to put the public in touch with the data that they need. DDSs provide a wide variety of assistance for free. If you're interested in a specific type of training or presentation, please reach out to a specialist in your area using the contact information on the slide. And now we'll begin taking questions. Following the question and answer session, again, Maria will provide a live demonstration of how to access ACS data in data.census.gov, and there will be a final question and answer session after her demonstration. Our first question is going to come from Angela. Angela, go ahead and wait for the prompt to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question. Angela, are you there?
I think she dropped out.
It's all right. We'll move on to the next question. The next question comes from Swarna Reddy. Lisa, can you make sure Swarna is able to unmute? Hi, Swarna, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Is the rural and urban data available at the county level?
Thank you for that question. Is there someone, a subject matter expert on the line that's able to answer? Thank you again for your question, Swarna. It seems like we don't have someone on the line, unfortunately, I can answer. What I would like for you to do is submit your question to the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov, and we'll get back to you and give you a response that way. Thank you so much for your question. Next question I have comes from Craig Shepard. Craig, are you there?
He is unmuted.
Craig, unfortunately, if you're speaking, we're not able to hear you. I would try to unmute on your end. In the meantime, we're going to move on to the next question. The next question comes from Laura Travers. Laura? It seems like she might have dropped off.
Yes.
So we'll take Miss Joanne Green next.
Hey, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. It must be a little bit of a delay. I'm in the UK. I just wanted to know, how do you want the data cited? You know, if you're going to use it as a reference, how would you like it to be cited?
Sure. Actually, I can actually answer that question for you. So if you're going to be citing the data in a story that you write, or if you're using it for research purposes, we'd ask that you attribute it to the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey 2018 to 2022 5-year estimates.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your question. The next question we'll take is from Isaiah O'Rear.
Interested in which data sets we should use for doing annual trends. So if I wanted to compare an estimate from, let's say, 2021 to 2022, what are the advantages of doing that within a single 5-year data set with like using a year variable versus comparing the multiple 1-year data sets for producing those annual year-to-year comparisons?
Thank you for your question. Is there a subject expert that's able to answer?
Hi, this is, sorry, Jewel. This is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Starcinic, S-T-A-R-S-I-N-I-C. Work on ACS variance estimation. Generally speaking, if the data is available for 1 year, we strongly recommend you use the 1-year data for trend analysis. It is difficult to, it's the interpretation when comparing overlapping 5-year estimates that is difficult. If you're having, say, the 2017 to 2021 5-year compared to the 2018 to 2022 5-year estimates, you have 4 years of overlap there. And
actually, can I follow up and clarify that I'm talking about just using a single 5-year data set and analyzing the years within that data set. So So that's not as recommended as using multiple 1 years as using a single 5-year data set, because there's a year variable within the 5-year where in theory you could look at each individual year, but is that inferior to the 1-year data set?
Are you referring to the public use microdata?
Yeah.
Okay. Generally speaking, the 5-year PUMS data and the 1-year PUMS data are generally similar. There should be quite a bit of, there should be few differences between a 1-year and a 5-year other than the weights on the files. So it shouldn't matter much, generally speaking, unless you've seen some errata that something has changed between the 1-year and a subsequent 5-year. Either should, in that specific case, using the PUMS data, it should be essentially equivalent.
Okay, except for inflation adjusted values, I assume. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Isaiah, for your question, and thank you, Mike, for responding. The next question we'll take will come from Robel. Lisa, can you unmute Robel's microphone?
I sent the request for him to unmute.
Thank you. He is not unmuted, so we'll keep the questions moving. The next question we'll take is from David Heller. David, your mic's been unmuted. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So what is the advantage to using the PUMA data versus just the regular like census tables? I'm a little bit confused on, what is the advantage of PUMA data? When would you use that as opposed to like those standard tables?
Thank you for your question, David. Is there an expert that's able to answer?
Hi, this is Michael Starsinek again. So the advantage of the public use microdata is if you want to get a tabulation of one variable or several variables crossed together that are not published in our tables. We publish more than 1,000 tables for the 5-year data, so there's a lot of material there. But if you're looking for something that isn't there, if you're looking for an age range we don't publish, or a cross of 2 or 3 or 4 variables that we don't publish, that's the real power of the public use microdata, is that you can tabulate those data, those crosstabs that you're looking for yourself. But if the data you're looking for are published, the published data is more accurate. We recommend you use that. But if you want something that's just not there, not in our set of published tables, then that's the best time to use the PUMS.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for your question. The next one we'll take, we're going to try again with Craig Shepard. Craig, please mute your microphone once prompted. It looks like he might have dropped out, so the next question we'll take is from Jeff Capizzi.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I had a question about where I could find the best documentation to calculate standard error, either for the looking at trends by year to see if there's a change over time, or if we looked at a recent period of time, either using a single year or a 5-year data set to look at group differences, for example, by race ethnicity. I was just looking for that documentation. We need to calculate 95% confidence intervals and have an estimate of the error given the ACS sample.
Thanks for your question, Jeff. Is there someone on the line who can answer?
Hi, this is Michael Starsinek again. We have plenty of documentation available on how to calculate margins of error and do statistical testing. I will work with the facilitators here to put some of those links in the chat. And you're also welcome, if you have any further questions, to contact PIO, and they will get your question to us if you need any additional assistance with the margins of error.
Great. Yeah, it's the 95% confidence intervals we need to get from the margins of error to those 95% confidence intervals, and that's just unclear. Thank you.
The ACS publishes 90% confidence intervals, but it is it is simple to convert those to 95% if that's what you need. That is included in our documentation.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you both. We'll take the last question from Sue. Sue, unmute your microphone when prompted. It looks like she dropped out, so we'll keep this moving. Thank you for those questions. I'll now hand it over to Maria for a demonstration on data.census.gov.
Thanks, Jewel. I'm just going to pick up where we left off on the PowerPoint. And I'll close out my view here. All right. There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. Oops, sorry. My name is Maria Valdesera. I work for the communications wing of data.census.gov. Excuse me, I'm having a little trouble with my PowerPoint here. Let's just go back. There we go. So I'm just going to do a pretty quick demo on how to access this data. So I'll be using some examples from the 2021 5-year for this particular demonstration, but once you're able to access the 2022 data next week, you'll be able to do this in the same way. So first off, I wanted to talk about our two main ways of accessing data in data.census.gov. The first being the single search, which is more of a free-form search box, and the advanced search, which is a step-by-step filtering method where you'll select desired checkboxes and then the site will return data to you. So a few tips: you can find many results with either search option. The only way to access some of the more complex topics or geographies, however, is by using the advanced search. So if you are not quickly finding the answer to your data question with the single search by using, say, a keyword or a phrase, then I would definitely recommend giving the advanced search a try. So again, the single search is really optimized for keywords and codes, specific geographies, topics, years, if you happen to know the table ID of the table you're searching for, or even the table prefix, as we can see in some of the screenshots on the slide. You can enter any of those into the single search and you'll be able to pull up some data. So our first example is looking at just that. We're looking for some health insurance tables for all zip code tabulation areas, or ZICTAs, in Alabama, and we'll specify 2021 for now. But again, if you would like to access that 2022 5-year data next week, you could just replace it with simply 2022. But I will go into data.census.gov now. This is the main landing page. So if you wanted to just type in health insurance, which is our topic, and then your geography, which is all ZICTAs in Alabama. And you, again, don't have to specify the year, but if you would like to have something specific, you could type in that year as well. So I just clicked on the search. You can see that we have multiple filters that have been added. This is also another update that I wanted to highlight, was we expanded this filter panel that will also come up when you go into the advanced search. But this is a newer feature where we now can see some of the most commonly used geographies on the left side of the screen, as well as our topics, surveys, years, and then finally our codes. So this is our table list here. If you just wanted to select the first table, this is selected characteristics of health insurance coverage, and you can also collapse the filter and results panel to see the full table. Now, since we are looking at ZICTAs in a whole state, that is a lot of data. So you might get a message like this saying that the table is too large to display. Typically, I tend to either use that download table if I'm looking at a ton of geographies, like say all ZICTAs in the US, but I can also click on the open the table button and that will usually load it. It does depend on your browser though. I am using Google Chrome for this, but we are able to open this table and see more of the table itself. So that is how you would use the single search for this. The second example which goes into the advanced search. Again, this is specifying geographies with complex names, for example, census tracts, collections, say if you wanted to say do all places in Rhode Island, or if you wanted to use those urban and rural components, for example, that would be a great way to use the advanced search. If you also want to add multiple topic filters and specify the survey program or table type, or if you're looking for specific population groups, those are also great times to use that the advanced search. So we're going to show this in our second example. This is looking at poverty data for all census tracts in Fresno County, California. So in order to get back to the main landing page of data.census.gov, you would just click on our logo up in the top left corner here and then select advanced search. And again, we see this filter panel that will appear with those expanded geography topics, things like that. Give it just a second to load. And since we are working on a little bit of a time crunch here, I'm going to try and refresh and see if that helps. I do apologize for the loading error. Let's see if I can. I'm going to stop my video very quickly just to see if that helps with the bandwidth. But I can also show my slides in the meantime. Let's do that instead. So you would go into the advanced search again. You would use the filters in order to select checkboxes. So this is looking at all census tracts within Fresno County and then poverty. The other thing that I wanted to mention is you can also select the detailed tables that would go into the survey, American Community Survey, and then it would be the 5-year estimates, since census tracts are only available with 5-year estimates. And then you would go in with the detailed tables. And then once you have selected and verified all of your filters, you'll then click search. I am going to see if this has loaded, so I'm just going to do this very quickly. So again, this is where you would select your geographies. So we would select census tract, California, Fresno County, and then all census tracts within Fresno County. Then I would select my poverty filter. So again, you just click into these topics until you can add those checkboxes that are available. And then finally, we would be selecting the detailed tables. But for right now, I am just going to click on the search just for the sake of time. So we are going to select our the subject table here instead. And I did want to show just a couple more features that are available for that's newer in the site. So the first thing being, if we select the more tools, we can see that we now have a citation button. So that would help with some people that may have been asking about citations. If you would like to add this, we do have multiple different styles available, and then you can copy it directly from the site now. So that is certainly a newer feature that we wanted to show. Also, if you do want to change the years, you'll use this drop down here. This is the downward facing arrow right next to the table title. And if you wanted to select earlier years, that is also where this would be available. And then I did want to show the next example, which is just looking at a geography profile for Marble Falls, Texas. So this is another newer feature that I did want to see, I wanted everybody to see. So this is our profiles tab. So you can either type in the geography into the single search as we've done before. So you can start typing that in and your profile will appear here. You can click on it and go straight to the profile, or you can use the profiles tab and this will give you a little bit more of an expanded view of the profiles. So it will pop up with the United States profile and then start showing other related profiles here. So you can see that it goes into the nation and then goes down into states and counties. But again, if we typed in Marble Falls, Texas, that will appear. And this is using, if this is a smaller geography, so it is using 2020 decennial census data as well as 2021 ACS 5-year, and this will be updated once the 2022 data is also available. So this gives you just a snapshot of the different topics that are available for this single geography. We have population pyramids available, as well as source tables linked within this page that are looking at these higher level data points from the ACS, as well as the decennial and our economic areas. So you would be able to click on this specific table title, and then it will take you to the table that will give you more information on the geography you selected for your geographic profile. So again, this, I do apologize for the loading times, but we are going to keep going on since I do have one more example demo to show you. So this is something that is a little bit different than what we typically do. This is when, you have an area of a map, or, maybe you live in a specific area and you aren't sure what census tract you might be able to use, and you want to find some data about it. So we're going to use our mapping capabilities to show you just a little bit of a different way to use the site in that way. And I also do want to show another newer feature that might be helpful to some people on this call. So we are going to go back to the main landing page. We're going to click on maps. And again, if you know the area, but you aren't sure of the geography, name, or anything like that, if you just know that, say, you live on a specific street, you can go to the mapping. And for this purpose, we are going to use the state of Georgia. I'm going to zoom in, and this will start populating with some street names. We get that granular down here. And so the specific road that I might be living on is Noah Thomas Road. So I'm going to collapse this results panel, and I am going to use this boundaries button here, and that is going to allow me to overlay some geographic boundaries on top of this map. So if I So if I zoom out a little bit further here, let's see, there we go. So it does start to populate. I can see if I zoom in just a little bit further here, we were right under here. So this is Noah Thomas Road. We can also click on the identify button, and then we can click on this area and it'll tell me exactly what census tract I'm in. So I can see that this particular area is in census tract 601.02 in Twiggs County, Georgia. So with that in mind, I am going to click on our logo, go back into the advanced search, and then I'm going to select census tract. Should repopulate here. Apologize for the loading errors once again. Select census tract, and then Georgia. We know we're in Twiggs County, so you can either scroll down or you can search for it in that search bar up top. And then we know we are in 601.002. So we are going to select that census tract. And then if we want, again, some higher level data, especially demographic data for this census tract, we can actually use the surveys filter, which will be available once the filter panel loads. I'm going to try and reload the page just for in the sake of time. Here we go. So you can actually use the surveys filter and select American Community Survey. Since we are using the census tracts, it is only available for 5-year estimates, and I'm going to select data profiles. So then we'll select search. And then we have our 4 data profile tables that are available that we can then map some data from. So very quickly, I'm just going to select a our ACS demographic and housing estimates. You can go to the maps by clicking on either the maps tab or selecting map tool or more tools and then selecting the map button all the way at the bottom there. But here we can map this data. So another function that I did want to show that is newer is if we collapse this filter panel here, we can now use the select tool to use a lasso. So we have a box, a circle, and then a lasso, which just allows you to draw virtually any shape that is that you would like to include data for. So if I wanted to draw this shape here, anything that this touches or encompasses would then be added to my map and then populate with data. So right now it is looking at the percent total male population, but if I wanted to change that variable, you can change the units to either numbers or percents. And this contains all of the variables found within this table. So we have race data, age and sex, and then a little bit of housing data as well, that you can change this to reflect what is being shown on the map. So if you wanted, say, 45 to 54-year-olds, you could then change that variable and the map will update to reflect that. So those are some of the newer features that I wanted to highlight within the site, as well as showing you how to access the data. If anybody has any other questions for us on data.census.gov, you can email our branch directly at census.data@census.gov. We also have our resources page available linked on this slide, so that gives you recent video tutorials, how to sign up for our newsletter, some how-to materials, as well as the ability to sign up for upcoming webinars and also workshops. And with that, I do want to turn it back over to Jewel. Again, if anybody has any follow-up questions after today's webinar, you can reach out to us at census.data@census.gov.
Thanks so much for that demo, Maria. Now we'll begin taking the final round of questions. And as a reminder, to ask your question, use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you in the order in which your hand is raised. When you ask your question, please state your name and your affiliation. And because we want to give everyone an opportunity to ask their questions, we'll all allow just one question and one follow-up per caller. While we wait for calls to come in, I would like to remind you that Embargo subscribers will have access to the 2018 to 2022 ACS 5-year statistics beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Tuesday, December 5th. And the release of the ACS 5-year news release products is set for 12:01 a.m. on Thursday, December 7th. To see this data prior to the release of December 7th, visit the embargo area, which you'll find on census.gov by clicking on Newsroom, then Embargoed Releases. After signing in, you'll have access to embargo data and other products in the press kit. The embargo area press kit link on this page will also take you there once the embargo period begins. I'd like to remind you that today's presentation slides will also be available in the press kit that's currently on census.gov. As we begin our question and answer session, please remember to speak clearly. Since we are completely virtual, we ask that you try to limit your background noise.
Hey, Joel, this is Gretchen. I'm seeing questions in the chat that the slides were not posted in the press kit before the webinar.
And that's unfortunately correct. We have been getting that fixed, so they should be up shortly.
Okay. And then I'm also seeing a lot of questions about, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
And it will be posted.
That is correct. The first question that we have comes from Benjamin Fisher. Please unmute your microphone when prompted. It looks like Benjamin might have dropped out. The next question we'll take is from E. Yi. Please unmute your microphone when prompted.
Question about state legislative district data on data.census.gov. For example, when I look up California state legislative district data on the data profile 05 table, it says ACS 2021 5-year, but for the district it says 2018 on the label. Does that mean the district boundaries are from 2018? I'm interested in post-2020 redistricting data.
Thank you for your question. Is there an expert that's able to answer?
This is Gretchen Gooding. Gretchen, Gretchen, Gooding, Gooding. I think what you're seeing is what's on data.census.gov right now, which is the last 5-year release, the 21 5-year estimates with the 2018 state legislative district boundaries. And what you'll see next Thursday on December 7th is the new data, which is the 2018 to 2022 5-year estimates, and those will have the 2022 state legislative district boundaries.
Thank you so much for that response, Gretchen. The next question we'll take is from Catherine Rice. Catherine, please unmute your phone when prompted. All right, in the observance of time, we'll move on to Rex Edwards.
The Brazilian ancestry was going to be different. I wonder if that's true with the 5. Presumably, just so you can compare the Brazilian speaking. Hear me?
I'm sorry, Rex. You're coming in and out, and we missed the first part of your question. Could you start over?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, much more clearly.
Yeah, there's recent announcements out of Census that the Brazilian ancestry, I think, was going to be changed, covered differently in the future, presumably, so you could compare Portuguese ancestry in Latin America with Hispanic ancestry. Does that apply to this ACS, and what is the change?
Thank you for your question. Is there an expert that's able to answer? It unfortunately appears that we do not have an expert that's able to answer your question, Rex. If you could submit your question to us at pio@census.gov, we'll work on it and get an answer to you as quickly as possible. And that is going to wrap up our questions. So thank you all for those. If you think of any questions following today's webinar, please contact us using the information on this slide. You can also connect with us by subscribing to our email alerts where we share important information about our data releases. You can also scan the QR code on the screen to visit census.gov to sign up for email alerts about upcoming data product releases. Additional information about the American Community Survey and this release can be found in our press kit, which you can get to by visiting census.gov. And finally, we ask that you please fill out an evaluation form. We want to ensure these sessions are helpful to you. The link to the evaluation will appear once you exit the webinar. And that wraps up today's webinar. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and thank you to our presenters, Gretchen and Maria. As a reminder, the data we have discussed today will be released to the public at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, December 7th. We look forward to next week's release and look forward to your use of ACS data. I'm Jill Jordan, and thanks again for joining us.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.